Hello, and welcome to the Art of Teaching the Whole Child in a Pandemic, Cultivating Trauma-Sensitive Practices for Resilience. This is Module 6P, Cultivating Predictability with Leveraged Time. So in your route to having 4 habits that stick, you are now in April, and after tuning in to week 1, you have decided during week 2 that you'd like to tackle the predictability strategy of leveraged time. So given the unpredictability that we're facing in this pandemic, we recognize that predictability is so much harder to establish right now, and that impacts our use of instructional time. But the good news is that research shows us effective transition practices and layered help routines can really help us maximize that instructional time, whether we're in person, hybrid, or remote learning, that we can promote effective transition practices and layered help routines in a way that is trauma sensitive to the needs of students in this very trialing year. So our objectives for this module is for us to learn some evidence-based time leveraging routines, specify a new personalized time leveraging habit for you to use so that you can use your daily pulse to monitor your habits and your wellness this year. You're going to need about 20 minutes right now, some clear headspace in your printed or digital journal. It looks like this so that you can do steps 4 through 6. And keep in mind as we move forward to use a habit mindset to think through, okay, it's one thing to identify a strategy that I want to use, but it's another thing to, at a whole new level, to say, this is exactly what it's going to look like. This is when and where it's going to happen. And I'm going to match it to the pit that I'm experiencing so that I can build more predictability in my day in a very meaningful, tangible way, not just I'm going to one day do it. And as you follow along, I'd encourage you to use your guided notes, whether you've printed them out or following along electronically, to take that next step with step 4 of just finishing this video. You're already on the right track of doing that. And then moving into step 5 by saying, what is going to be my routine that I want to use this month and really invest in? It's ultimately your choice between the 3 that I'm going to share with you to address those slow, rocky transitions and the students waiting for help pretty inefficiently in the classroom. So those can be 2 big sources of lost instructional time. And so we can regain those by building more predictability with some of the strategies that we're going to share with you today. So the first one that we're going to talk about is effective transitions. And so we're just really reflecting and keeping in mind that transitions throughout the school day really add up, and smooth ones can really bring predictability for us in our learning environments. And just recognizing that return from recess, specials, gym class, lunch, that all of those returns can be really difficult transitions, and they add up that time. Then we think about other transitions throughout the day, like getting students' attention for a lesson, moving seats from small groups into a whole group discussion, or transitioning from math block into reading block, from independent reading into a whole group discussion about what they were just reading. And for anybody in a school, between activity transitions that impact us all, whether you're in the classroom or a resource room, or you're a speech pathologist, school psychologist, all of us really have to manage a lot of those between activity transitions, even for those of us who are service providers to get students back to the classroom or from the classroom. Those transitions can really add up to being about 45 minutes to an hour of our day very easily. And so it's really important that we think about how can we maximize instructional time in the day and reduce some of these pits of having slow or rocky transitions. So the effective transitions are a stack of ingredients for highly effective transitions. And so research shows us that we can really create predictability by using these steps, what we call swaps in this module. So first, we set a timer. Then we set a warning of about 1 minute, 2 minutes left in this activity. After we've set that timer, that really empowers us to be able to give that warning. So these, you can see how these stack onto each other as a stack of ingredients. But we're giving that warning a lot like we do as adults, right? So we get a 2-minute warning in football, and in other areas we get a heads up about upcoming coming activities. And so it's a really helpful tool in the classroom. And then attention grabbers, which are very common, whether you use 1, 2, 3, eyes on me, whether you turn the lights on and off or something else. There's a lot of good attention grabbers out there that we can use, but we embed it into this ingredient of effective transitions. And then we pre-correct expectations. And so this is for those of you who've tuned into one of our other modules where we talked about the CHAMP expectations. That's about conversation, help, activity, movement, participation, all of the things that we expect from students about their behavior. We identify it during a transition, at least one champ expectation or type of behavioral expectation that we want to clarify for the students, that we want to preemptively correct for, rather than just waiting for it to go wrong and correcting it then, but we're going to pre-correct for it. And then we're going to give shout outs to those students who follow through on that. So if we say, you know, we're going to walk down the hallway with very calm walking feet, then we want to give shout outs to students for that. And I've worked with a number of teachers who set themselves up with these swaps transitions to then give kudos and shout outs for the first 3 that are able to do that with walking feet, and then give corrections to those who don't have the best walking feet. But the idea here is that we're setting ourselves up with very clear expectations and then being able to give feedback on those. So let's dive in further to these 5 steps. So the first one is setting that timer. And so let's tune into a video that talks a little bit more about setting timers in our classrooms.
That's time. All right.
I do like to use a timer because I feel like if you give students too much time to do a task, then the task drags out and they don't stay focused as much as they should. So the timer really helps them with that concrete, this is how much time you have, it's going to go off. You need to be done when the timer goes off.
You guys done? You're done with the math here? Yeah, you're finishing your totals?
So it'd be like right about there.
What? Yeah.
It's for me too, because I can get so caught up as a teacher in going around and checking in at each table and like really looking at the kids, and I can get a little caught up in that and lose track of time. And so it helps keep me on task. And then for the students, the timer really helps give them the concrete, this is when it's done.
That is it. So finish up.
Just helps them stay on task and it helps keep them focused. And I feel like that sort of little bit of pressure helps push the kids a little bit.
So as you can see, the timer really helps regulate the flow of the day in the classroom. And a good hybrid tip, if you're in a hybrid model of learning right now, is to be able to embed your timers into your slides. There are lots of ways, whether in your PowerPoint or in your Google Slides. In Google Slides, you can add YouTube videos really easily into your slides, and then go do a quick search for a timer in YouTube, and you can easily find timers of different lengths in YouTube to facilitate that in your hybrid model of learning. And then having that up will help you facilitate that 1-minute warning, of course, before transitioning into an attention grabber. And I want to show you a video of one of my favorite attention grabbers for a number of reasons. And let's tune into this and notice how she uses this technique, and then already goes ahead with those shout outs. So you're going to see some shouting out going on. Keep an eye out for that.
I like to get their attention silently. So rather than saying, you know, if you can hear me, clap once or something like that. So one of the things I do is I put my hand up. Thank you, Justin, Diana. Okay. Anybody in the room who sees my hand puts their hand up, and so on and so forth. So anybody who sees another hand up, they all put their hands up. It's a silent way of getting their attention. All the kids don't have to be facing me in order for it to happen. So they're always facing each other when they're working in small groups. And it also gives them a second or two to kind of finish that last thought, whatever they're talking about or working on. Okay, so it's not an immediately, you know, you must be silent now. So it gives them a second to bring their attention back to the whole class. Okay.
So as you can see, she was going ahead and shouting out a few students, Justin, Diana, Samantha, and that was good to see her already on track with that. And then we're going to pre-correct our expectations, and I'm sure some of you might be tuning in from the secondary level and thinking this is pretty elementary, but tune into this video example that can really clarify for you how this applies even to our older students, and especially with the technology that we're using these days.
If I could have professional courtesy, please go ahead and put your machines at half mast. Professional courtesy, it's a call to every person in the space for their eyes and ears to be focused in that moment on the teacher. And what professional courtesy looks like is computers are at half mast, headphones are out, and students are completely present with the teacher in that moment.
You guys can give me professional courtesy. You can half master computers.
Because so much of what we do is self-guided and students are really working on their own things so often, that makes the moments of bringing them all back really important. And we're very intentional about explaining what that term means and the expectation associated with it. Ladies and gentlemen, please give your professional courtesy to your colleague.
So you can see a great expectations being set there and being taught to those students, followed by those shout outs and corrections, of course. So that is SWAPs in a nutshell. I would really encourage you to remember that the key here is that you're building your own habits. So have a little grace for yourself and recognizing how you're going to get started. And maybe start with one pit transition and just saying, here, I'm going to start building SWAPs just during this one transition that's really difficult right now. And don't expect just yourself to do it throughout the day. And if you're thinking about some asynchronous tasks and you want to really help with the students' independent transition for that, then consider this little technique of just noting your estimated time to do the task. So telling those students, you know, the estimated time to be able to do this is about 10 minutes. So you can help empower them to be mindful of how well they're using their time on the various asynchronous tasks that we're sending home. But another technique to be able to navigate these difficult times. All right, so let's look at layered help routines. Big picture, we're going to have 3 strategies here, but we're thinking about layers of help that students can access independently before approaching you, the teacher. And so this is a really great technique for reducing how much time students are spending waiting for help. Maybe they're getting fatigued from raising their hand. They have their hand and just sitting there holding their hand raised by using another hand to keep it up. And so if that's a problem in your classroom, or if you've got many students asking for help and they're all waiting for that, then these are great techniques to keep in mind and on your radar. The first one is creating and using FAQs or a model, then reminding and using 3 then me or peer coaches, and then designating student liaisons. So we'll go through each of these 3 as examples. First one is creating and using that FAQ or model. So this is an opportunity that we have to clarify the common gaps that students have in their understanding of a task. So this is great for project-based learning and hybrid learning. So we're providing an example of a completed project, completed task or paper or essay, or frequently asked questions where we compile the expected questions that we think students are going to have, maybe the asked questions that have already been submitted or provided from other students, and then any available resources that they have, websites, go to you know, YouTube videos or any kind of tutorial that can help give students a reference tool to approach before they approach you. The second strategy is reminding and using the 3 then me or peer coaches. And so this is the key here is reminding students verbally and visually to ask peers before going to their teacher. So then this is great for independent seat work particularly. But one of the things that I've noticed is a lot of classrooms I've been in, they haven't asked 3 before me poster in their classroom. But then when I ask them, oh, when's the last time you've reminded them of that? A lot of teachers I get crickets from because we're like, oh yeah, it's and all the things that we do throughout the day, it's really easy to let this one slip. So the key here is the habit of reminding your students to use the 3 then me. And so thinking about what is some pit times of the day where students are really waiting around for your help, and maybe saying, I'm going to remind them proactively to use the 3 then me. Or maybe a peer coach, which is another spin on this idea where we're just assigning a student that has mastery with this topic or subject or activity to be that first line of resources for the questions. And so really empowering peers to support each other, whether that's 3 then me or peer coaches, can really help add that layer of help before they approach you. And the final one is designating student liaisons. And so this is when we assign each group, when we break out into group projects or breakout rooms, we're assigning each group a designated student to track questions for the teacher in a help log of some kind. So we're building student soft skills, their social and organizational skills, by having one student say, all right, you're going to keep track of all the questions that that group has. And then we're going to notice that students are going to seek help sooner. So they're going to be able to keep this running tally, keep this running log, and seek out your help. Seek out help from each other sooner, and then bring that to your attention. The big picture takeaway from this is that you're really promoting self-management of students seeking support. So they're really able to regulate and think through how they approach you and or their resources, their each other. So this is a really great tool to help students recognize how they can get your help and help from anywhere and be able to manage that need independently. The final technique that we're going to discuss in this module is a visual help cue. So this is a nonverbal procedure for efficiently managing help requests. One of the best and most simplest approaches to this is really just a double-sided card that says help or okay. So a student, when you're giving independent or cooperative tasks and they want to get assistance, they first attempt the task with the card green side up, saying, I'm doing okay. But then when the student has a question, they turn the card to red side up. And the key here is that then they must continue working. So they're not going to raise the hand and just wait there forever until you come to them. But they're going to turn that red side up and just keep on working. And you keep moving around the room. And when you see that red card, you provide assistance. But the idea here is that they turn over that to request help and they keep on working. And maybe sometimes it's a folder of work that's related to the activity that you want them to go to and complete that. And maybe they can get extra credit for it. They don't have to, but it's just something that they can go to while they wait for help. And just recognize that, this is going to take some time, some effort. When you first do it, you're still going to have some hands being raised that you're going to have to redirect. And that's the natural part of transitioning into this. But the idea here is that we're going to really try to redirect those students. Instead of raising their hand, they're going to start using these nonverbal approaches to supporting them asking for help. So this video will give you a little bit of an insight into how this can be used in even a different way, a teacher cue in this secondary school setting that could be used to facilitate this strategy.
Great job. Okay. Let me know if I can help more. Catherine and Kyson, you're up next. So the teacher queue is on the whiteboard. It's a place where students can sign up when they need help from me. And it's a way for me to keep organized when they're doing group work. At the beginning of each class, I write teacher queue 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then when students need help, they sign their name. When I see that a student has signed up on the queue, I go and meet with them. Go down and then have another one going down this way. When I'm done helping them, I go back to the queue, erase the student's name who I've helped, and go to the next person. And just make sure you're going on the inside of the line. I always feel a lot of anxiety if I don't have a queue. The queue makes things really fair. I don't have to manage who needs help when. I can just focus on meeting with students. I think it's actually going to work better if there's like a force applied across this entire piece.
All right, a great spin on this technique, particularly if you're using a hybrid model. Maybe consider using a shared cloud doc for this queue. So you can still do this even when there's not a whiteboard there. If you're doing remote learning or hybrid learning, that there can still be a shared cloud doc for all students to type in their names. But a great technique to be able to get to students in the order in which their help was needed. And if you're a non-instructional participant in our educational learning environments, you can still use these type of techniques yourself. So keeping in mind that when students approach you as maybe the social worker, school psychologist, other mental health provider, that there's opportunities where we can have them request with a form to have time with you and not just walk in and interrupt you at any time or to interrupt another student's session. And then there's also ways that they can get help independently. So we have posters of different skills that we're teaching. And so having those available into our environment. So when we're delivering sessions and walking through some social emotional learning, that we can point to those posters and ask which one of these do you think is you're experiencing right now. But just thinking through those as other resources that students can have to access and help independently of your support in a way that empowers them to self-manage that access. And then just keep in mind, there's also the electronic tools like this, like the appointment sheet that we can also use, as I've used in this course, the Calendly app to book an appointment online. That could also be applied in a remote learning environment where a student might not be able to put that slip in your door. But the key here is thinking about other ways that students can access help without going through you, and maybe being able to independently navigate that help request without it disrupting the classroom and instructional environment as the slip does. So the student can do that independently. So the next step is to commit to that strategy. Whatever one is fitting for your pits right now, making that choice for you to specify this personalized cue that is going to help you remember to use that time leveraging strategy, whichever one it is, and being able to identify what is the reward that you're going to see when you implement that. And keep in mind the opportunities that we have to stick with it by stacking this onto an existing habit. Maybe thinking about after you do the finish a do now, remind the students of the help layer that you're going to provide during this lesson and say, okay, you're done with the do now. Remember, if you need help, this is how you can get it. And then making that tiny, making this very simple strategy, writing it out, writing out the script that you might use, and then keeping it fun with a treat or some kind of other way that we can keep it fun. Thinking about like every time you use a swaps transition, if this is new to you, treating yourself, having some candy or something to enjoy and celebrate that moment of implementing very effective transition routines. And that'll help you stick with it. But the first step in being able to stick with it is naming that specific cue and reward of when are you going to use the strategy. So you've identified the one you like, when are you going to use it? Maybe for you, it's when you need to transition from small groups into that larger group discussion. You know it's going to be rocky, so you're going to use those swap steps to set the timer, give a warning, get their attention, pre-correct for moving, and give some shout outs. And notice that this transition is going to be much quicker and smoother because it gives students that predictability that they need. And then maybe it's instead anticipating a few students to have a hard time understanding a task. So you're going to remind everyone, ask 3 peers, then me. And then notice that students are getting their needs met with less instructional flow interruptions. Maybe for you, you're starting to float around to different students working independently on their projects. And so, you know what, you're thinking about them getting help and you say, all right, I'm going to write a help cue on the board and remind students to use that. And then notice that you're getting students in the order of their need without disruption to the flow. Maybe it's students sitting outside your counseling office while you're leading a session. So you're going to direct them to use the appointment slip that they need. And then notice that you're teaching them a skill of requesting appointments, just like they're going to do as adults. They're going to get relief in the moment because they know you're going to see them, and then they go back to the classroom and stay there longer. So whatever it is for your next step is to share your key takeaway and your personalized habit plan so that you can make it stick this month in this strategy. And keeping in mind that you have your pulse coming into you daily and then your pulse chart that you can review weekly to be able to monitor how well you're sticking with this. If you have any questions or want to bounce off any ideas off of me, do not hesitate to sign up for office hours or reach out to me via email. I'd love to see how you can leverage time this month and get away from a lot of those disruptions to our predictability in our classroom to build students' predictability and resilience in this time. Thank you so much for tuning in.